Good evening and welcome to Pints and Quarts, a show brought to you by the Craft Beer Nation. Tonight is Thursday, December 8th, edging ever so close to Christmas. So make sure you get those last-minute gifts bought as soon as you can to avoid the backlog and UPS and FedEx and all that good stuff. Anyway, tonight's guest, we have Kevin Blodger on from Union Craft Brewing out of Baltimore, Maryland. He's the co-founder and head brewer. So, I've seen some of their beer in the Northern Virginia area. The one that stands out is Duck Pin. That's one of their staples. Her double Duck Pin was a killer. So be sure to come back and hear what Kevin has to say. But before we get into that, I want to direct you to our different social media platforms. You can find us on Facebook at Craft Beer Nation. You can also find us on Instagram at The Craft Beer Nation, and we tweet at Craft B Nation. So pour that beer in a glass and get comfortable, and make sure you come back and hear what Kevin has to say about Union Craft Brewing. All right. So, guys, like I said, we have a fun show lined up tonight. But before we get to our guests, I want to introduce my panel, my co-host for tonight.
Solo time.
Freddie Rodriguez, how you doing tonight, my man? Missed you last week. How you doing tonight?
I'm doing good, Randy. Doing good. What's going on, Kevin?
How you doing, man?
Well, man, Thursday, almost Friday. I'm going to time for the weekend. Sharing a good beer. Interested to know a little bit more about Union Craft. And just, hang out a little bit.
What you drinking, Freddie?
I'm drinking at the moment I want to say this is, hold up. Just double IPA coming at 8% ABV. This is Transient Artisan Ales, and this is called The Juice is Loose.
Hey, Orenthal.
I think they're from they're from Michigan. Yeah, the typical, the hazy, kind of Northeast style.
Shout out Aslan real quick on that glass.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, family crafted Commonwealth beer. No, man, I mean, beautiful lacing on it. It fits the mold. It fits the thing. It's got a nice bittering to it too, which I kind of like. It kind of, it's not that like over the top kind of juiciness, I guess. I know everybody doesn't want to use the word juiciness, but it's not just tons of all these aromatic hops and flavor. Without any much bittering hops implied. There is some bittering, so it has, and the maltiness to it. It's got that cracker maltiness that kind of.
It's not a review. It's not a review.
Just letting you know. Just let it bind together.
All right. Like I said, our guest tonight, Kevin Blodger, co-founder and head brewer at Union Craft Beer. Kevin, how you doing tonight, man?
Good. How y'all doing, man?
Good.
Living life. Life is good. I have a beer in my glass. I'm about to talk to you about beer. We linked up at GAB. Well, we just kind of met each other at GABF.
You know how that is. You get in a room, you look around, especially a place like, you're in Denver, Colorado. You're like, there's another brother over there. If something goes down, we got each other.
You already know. So, hey, Kevin, let's get right into it, man. We usually start the interviews out asking our guests the same question because I always find this answer to be interesting because it varies, obviously from one person to another. But how did your love affair with craft beer begin?
Well, it's funny. I was at a beer dinner last night in Reston. I grew up down in that area, and some people I went to high school with were there, and they were like, "I remember when you used to be a straight edge kid in high school. You didn't drink, you didn't do anything. What happened?" So I went to University of Maryland. And started drinking beer there. There's nothing else to do.
Hold on. Is that what happened?
That's what happened. So went to Maryland, started drinking, and started drinking craft beer. We were getting, cases of 40s and all that kind of stuff. And I still remember one day my roommate saying, "Hey, let's go drink some good beer. Let's get some good beer." So we bought a 6-pack, and I think I got a 6-pack of Pete's Wicked Winter Ale. And I drank it, and I was like, "Oh man, this tastes good." And so from there, we started just exploring, getting different beers every weekend, trying stuff. From there, I started home brewing. Really enjoyed that. And then when I got out of school, I took a job as an assistant brewer, and I've pretty much been doing it ever since.
You were home brewing in college?
In college, yeah.
Okay, so I'm assuming you lived off campus. I hope.
Yeah. I lived off campus, and I was making beer, and people actually liked it. So I was like, maybe I can do this. Yeah.
So who did you take your job as an assistant brewer with?
So my very first job in the industry was at the District Chop House down in Washington, D.C. It only lasted.
Chinatown.
Yeah, right in Chinatown. It only lasted for a couple of months. The guy wasn't paying me much money. I couldn't get regular hours. So I left there and I went and I worked at a school for a few years. But in the back of my head, I was like, I don't want to do anything else but brew beer. I was working at school. I started dating my wife. She was very encouraging of saying, hey, why don't you get back into brewing? You seem to really love it. So one day I called up to Frederick Brewing, which is now Flying Dog, and asked them if they were hiring. They had just fired a guy and needed somebody. So I came up there and interviewed, got that job. And that's really where I think my career kind of blossomed, and I learned the art and science of brewing.
Cool. So that's when you really kind of honed in your brewing chops, and then something happened and you were faced with an opportunity.
Well, so I was there. I was getting married. I got married. I was at the time making probably $11 an hour, let's say. I think I was making $10 an hour. I got married. They raised me to $11 an hour. So I was like, I got a wife now. I got to make some money. So I found out that Cap City Brewing in the Inner Harbor in Baltimore was hiring. So Cap City is a DC-based chain, but at the time they had one restaurant in Baltimore. And the guy that was there didn't want to be there anymore. He was leaving, going to the DC location. So I took the job in Baltimore as a head brewer, which was my first head brewing position. Gave me a chance to kind of play around, learn how to do some stuff. And it was a great opportunity, but I was there for about a year, caught wind they were going to close that location. So I went to Jason Oliver, who's now the head brewer at Devil's Backbone, but at the time he worked for Gordon Biersch. I said, Jason, man, I need a job. Can you hook me up? You guys got all these chain, you're a chain, you got stores all around the country. And I said, I know you're opening one in Rockville, Maryland, which was very close to where I lived at the time. So Jason said, I hired a guy for there yesterday, but we're opening a place in Illinois right outside of Chicago. If you'll take that job, I can probably get it for you. So I took that job. Me and my wife moved out to Naperville, Illinois. And I worked, it was about 25 miles outside of Chicago. And I was there for about 3 years. And that's where I learned lager brewing and really got my chops, I think, at Gordon Biersch. That's where I started winning GABF medals. Just the whole Chicago beer scene was so eye-opening because at the time DC had a scene, but it wasn't. I got to Chicago and you got Ray Daniels there, who's doing Brewer's Publication and writing all these books, and Randy Mosier, who wrote Tasting Beer, and then you've got Goose Island was there, the Rock Bottom there, which was the busiest rock bottom in the country, and Pete Crowley, they were doing crazy stuff, and the scene there just blew me away, and I met all these brewers and saw all this different stuff happening. And it really opened my eyes to what craft beer and the craft beer scene could be.
That's dope. And
so how did that translate to you? So how did you get from Chicago? And ultimately, how did you end up with the opportunity in Baltimore with?
So one of my buddies from college that I drank a lot of beer with was living in Baltimore at the time. And we had started drinking good beer. We were sending bottles back and forth to each other. And he was like, in about 2006, he was like, we started saying we should open a brewery one day. That would be cool. But it was kind of just like, we'll open a brewery. In about 2008, he hit me up and he said, I think realistically Baltimore needs a brewery. I think we can do something. He had met our third partner, John, at the time. And John was a graphic designer and into marketing, but really loved beer as well. We were all home. Well, they were home brewing. I was doing it professionally. And so we kind of said, I met this guy, John. He's kind of into it too. Let's figure out if this is realistic. So the three of us started. We did a lot of Google Hangouts, a lot of emails back and forth. Can we really do this? Can we not do this? And then we flew out to CBC in San Francisco. I think that was probably in 2010 to really get a feel for the industry to see if this was something that we could open up a brewery. The three of us clicked. So then from there, we wrote a business plan. I had my first child in 2009, so my wife wanted to come back to this area anyways. And I found a guy at Gordon Biersch in Rockville, Maryland, the one that I really wanted to work at originally. He wanted to come out to the Midwest. So we did a swap. I came out here to Rockville. He went back to Illinois, which allowed us to then really hone in on writing this business plan and getting the business started. So we raised some money, and we're able to start Union.
So I mentioned in the intro that I think Duckpin is probably like your flagship beer, right?
Yeah, it's we do 4 core beers. Duckpin's the first beer that we brewed. It's probably about 45% of our production right now. Okay,
so being that a beer, an IPA, is 45% of your production, what is that your identity as a brewery? Is that do you guys want to be known as an IPA brewery, or do you just want to be?
No, I mean Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, you got it.
We call Duck Pit a pale ale. It kind of walks the line between a pale ale and an IPA.
Kind of like a Citizen.
Yeah.
DC Brown.
Yeah. So we wanted to do. I think our whole niche as a brewery is we want to make approachable beers that a beer geek can appreciate, and a newcomer to craft beer can appreciate as well. So we want to have kind of flavors there that you can feel, you drink, you enjoy, and somebody that really knows beer says, hey, this is a well-crafted beer. And somebody that doesn't know beer says, hey, this is just delicious. What else do these guys make? So that's kind of our goal. So for most of our core beers, they're drinkable, approachable beers. And then we'd like to do some weird stuff too. We do some gozas and we play around with different stuff, but we want to have drinkable, approachable beers.
So let me ask you this, because we've obviously we've been graced in the opportunity to speak to a lot of different breweries, obviously on much larger scale, smaller scales. So going from what you said, some people, they homebrew. Eventually, people drink their beers, like the beers, and some people, fortunate enough, they can string some money together. They have the funds. They open up a small, a brewery, and they start going that way. For you, for instance, you kind of made your rounds in the world, and kind of not in the world, but in the craft beer world, let's say, or that circle, and you got to experience a lot of things. Were you ever, or as far as like I say, as like Union Craft Brewing goes, were you guys inspired by any beers in particular? Because you said you guys got to sending beers to each other. Well, not that we promote illegal beers, but seriously, so were there any breweries?
They sent yeast samples. Yeast samples, Freddie.
Sure. It was olive oil. Everybody knows.
There you go.
So were you inspired by any other breweries and kind of helped you kind of mold what you said? Okay, this is how we want to be, or like Randy kind of said.
Well, so to me, a brewery that really inspired me, and we're actually flying to Chicago on Monday to go check them out, was Half Acre. So they started out contract brewing, but then they built this really cool brewery in a neighborhood, and it was you saw people. It was across the street from a Jewel, which is a grocery store. Yep. So you saw people, they would come to the neighborhood, they go get their groceries, they come across, they get their growler, and they make a beer called Daisy Cutter. And Daisy Cutter is definitely the inspiration for Duck Pin. It was a beer that all three of us liked. It was a super hoppy pale ale. And so they really inspired what we wanted our brewery to be. I wanted our brewery to be in a neighborhood, a community hub where people would come hang out. And so that was definitely a brewery that inspired us. Goose Island. So Chicago put a deep stranglehold on what I think a brewery should be like. What I loved about Goose Island was that they were not nationwide at the time, but they were pretty far-reaching. Yeah. But they were still Chicago's brewery. So it was Chicago's brewery, but you get that beer in Maryland, or you could get that beer in Arizona, or whatever. Yeah. But they still had their Chicago roots, and everybody in Chicago kind of supported that. They would do these quarterly dock parties that everybody would turn out for. So I just thought those kind of breweries were doing really cool stuff.
That's dope. Awesome.
So I want to talk to you real quick about your brew house, right? But before we go there, I want to take a step back and ask you this question. Through the process of opening up Union, we all know people who are passionate about craft beer, and we all know people who would rather get up every day and go and brew beer as opposed to getting up every day and going and staring at a computer screen, right? If you what was the one single biggest lesson you learned in the process of opening up a brewery that you think would be important for somebody who's trying to go along that same path?
It's the thing that I think was tough was that the strain that it put on my family. At the time, I had a young son when we first started. He was 2 years old. I was sometimes working 15, 16-hour, 18-hour days, double brewing. When we first started, it was just me and John. Adam was still at his day job, which he quickly left because he couldn't stand just not being at the brewery. But so it was me and John, and I was brewing. So I would have to come in and we'd do a double brew. So I would drop my kid off at school in the morning at 9, let's say, and I wouldn't get home till 2 or 3 in the morning some nights. So it put a lot of pressure on my wife, on my kid, and it was tough. It was tough for my marriage for a while. It was just tough. It put a strain on everything. So I think you got to think about the time that you need to put in when you're starting a business like this. For sure. You got to make sure your family's down with it. They know what's going on. because it's just a lot of time and a lot of commitment, and you're not going to be home as much, especially at first. Because at first it was just the three of us, so we were out, we were doing all the events, any tastings. It was one of the three of us. I was brewing at the brewery. When we opened the tap room on Saturdays, it was the three of us. So it's a lot of time that you put into it. Now, thank God, we have this great staff and we have a great team that can handle a lot of that stuff for us. But at first, I think that's probably the hardest thing for all three of us, was that it took a lot of time away from our families, which, thank God we have these three strong wives that were able to kind of hold us up while we were doing it. But it definitely put a strain on things for a while.
How big is your team now? Like,
we have about 23 employees now. I think if you count the three of us, it's still about 23 people.
Okay. Yeah, that's interesting because usually when people think about opening up a brewery, I think, or at least when I think about it, I worry about the financial aspect of it, right?
Funds, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, worry about the
money was tight too. Don't get me wrong, but we have a very dedicated group of investors that helped us out. The finances were tough at first. We didn't take a salary at first, so we were all living off our wives. So our wives still had to work. We were living off our wives' salaries. We would pay some bills through the brewery, but we didn't take any take-home cash. Financial was tough too, but I think even more than financially, because I knew we were going to make it. I knew I was making good beer. I knew I had two good partners that were doing the right thing, and we were going to make it. But it was just the time strain was probably the toughest thing.
That's interesting, and I don't think anybody's ever said that before. Like, think about people usually say something along the lines of, well, there's all this regulation that you have to go through, all these different approvals, and nobody, especially, maybe because some of these people weren't married at the time, perhaps, I don't know. Yeah. But yeah, that's a good point. I mean, that's tough on your family because if you're starting out small, you got to brew enough beer for people to come and drink, and that means doubling up, and that's a long time.
And I mean, when we started, all three of us have kids, so that made it even tougher, So
yeah.
Freddie, you about to say something?
No, I was just saying it makes total sense. Like when you really think about it, you said, like, I was thinking the same thing. It's a finance-based thoughts, but if it's not working at home,
yeah,
it's not going to really work out on the other end too.
The funny thing about it is it's like my wife got the part of I have to be at the brewery and I have to do this and I'm working and that's why I'm there. But it was hard for her to kind of grasp. But you're just going to a bar and you're sitting around drinking beer. How does that work? Like, what are you doing? But like when we first started, those bar owners wanted us in there drinking beer, showing our faces. And so while it was cool to go out and talk to people about the beer and drink beer and have fun, it was still work. There was times where I think none of the three of us really wanted to go to certain places. We'd go to, some hole in the wall bar and BFE and like, it was cool that people came out to drink our beer, but at the same time, I would have much rather been home sitting on my couch watching Murder, She Wrote than being out at some bar. Yeah.
Yeah.
Nah, for sure, though. I mean, that's big into it. Like, I always applaud people that kind of mention that whole neighborhood aspect and family aspect to it. Because that's, like you said, it's big. You have time away from the kids, especially when you start, young kids, and it's tough even being away from them working all those long hours.
Yeah.
It's always a good thing to see, craft breweries kind of say, hey, we know everybody has families, everyone's, welcome neighborhood kind of vibe.
Yeah. Yeah, that's definitely what Union's all about.
So now fast forward and back to you guys got the brewery open. You got a team of 20, 23 people, including you guys. How big is your brew house?
So we have a 20-barrel premier stainless brew house, and then we have 4 40-barrel fermenters, and right now 10 60-barrel fermenters with another 60 coming in a couple of weeks, a new kettle coming in a couple of weeks, and another bright tank.
Boom.
Wait, you guys are pumping some beer then?
Yeah, we'll probably do about 10,000 barrels this year. That's our goal. So
he just stunned on us, Randy. He just
10,000 for 2016 or
for 2016.
Okay.
Yeah,
that's pretty good, man. I mean,
it's been steady growth every year, which has been great. City of Baltimore's had our back, which has been amazing. The state of Maryland's had our back. DC, we just went to Northern Virginia about a year ago, and so things have been good.
So right now your distribution footprint is DMV?
Yeah, DMV. So entire state of Maryland, all DC, and then Northern Virginia down to about Winchester.
Okay. So you haven't gotten down to like Richmond and all that stuff yet?
No, not yet.
Okay. Now, you guys just did speaking of Northern Virginia, you guys just did a collaboration with Ocelot.
I'm drinking it right now. The Lucifer Trees.
Can you tell us a little bit about that beer?
Yeah, so we do a series called the Reunion Series, and kind of what the theme of that series is, we find brewers that worked in Maryland and are now someplace else. We bring them back to the brewery to do a beer with them. And what's really been cool about it is all three of the breweries that we've worked with are guys that have been very pivotal in my career. So the first one we ever did was with Austin Beer Works out in Austin, Texas, and Will Golden, who's the brewmaster there, one of the owners there. We kind of chopped it up together at Frederick. We came up together there, brewed together, so it was cool to do that one. The second one we did was a sour Vienna lager with Jason Oliver from Devil's Backbone. Very instrumental in my career, got me my job at Gordon Biersch. And then this one was cool to work with Adrian and Mike down at Ocelot. Mike gave me my job. He was my boss at Cap City. So it was good. I got to work with him as well, so it's been fun. So for this beer, we decided to do, Ocelot's known for their IPAs, but we wanted to do something a little different. So we said, let's do a black IPA. And so originally when I wrote the recipe, I envisioned this about 7% beer. But then as it got into it, it got stronger and stronger. So it finished at about 9%, about 100 IBUs, kind of get this great bitterness, nice aroma. So it's almost like drinking hoppy chocolate. It's got this really great chocolate note to it. Really happy with how the beer turned out.
Not hot chocolate, ladies and gentlemen, but hoppy chocolate.
For sure.
So yeah, we had Ocelot on about a month ago. Adrian's a lot of fun, man.
Yeah,
that dude's a lot of fun to hang out with. I got a chance to chop it up with him at the brewery. It might have been the next day. Yeah, it was a holiday, so yeah, I went and chopped it up with him. They're a lot of fun. They're brewing some great stuff.
Oh, they really are.
Yeah, and they aren't shy about who they are as a brewer either.
No, that's what I love about those guys. They are what they are.
Yeah. So, where do you see Union in let's say, I don't know, 5 years? 5 to 10 years?
Well, right now we're kind of in the process of finding our new brewery space. We think we're going to outgrow our current space at about 15,000 barrels. So it gives us about a year and a half to 2 years to kind of figure out what we're going to do. We're trying to find a place in Baltimore where we can get a good chunk of space, get about a 60-barrel brew house, and start brewing there. We want to find a place we're going to be at for the next 20 to 30 years, hopefully, making delicious beer. So I hope in 5 years Union is killing it. We're doing 20,000 barrels, let's say, or 30,000 barrels, and still staying true to our values and our roots, but making delicious beer for more people.
Now, you mentioned earlier that you you said you knew that y'all were going to be all right because you knew that you were making good beer. But do you ever stand back and say to yourself, damn, like we're doing this shit right now? Like,
the first time I did that at Union was the 2012 GABF. We had been open for about 3 months at the time, and we entered, I think, 3 or 4 beers, and it got to the last category, which was the alt beer category. We hadn't won a medal, and I'd won a few medals at Gordon Biersch by then. So not that I expected to win a medal, but I wanted to win a medal. So it came to the alt beer category, and they did through bronze, and we didn't win it. And with the silver, we didn't win it. And then all of a sudden they said, alt beer, Union Craft Brewing for the gold medal. And shit, I couldn't believe it, man. And that's a moment I think we were all kind of shocked, and then we all just jumped up and we couldn't believe it. And that's when I think all of us really knew that, this is for real, man. We're doing it now.
I can imagine.
We here.
Awesome.
Yeah, that felt good.
I bet it did, man.
Yeah.
So and this is I want to end this interview with a question that I last week we had Schmaltz Brewing on, right? Jeremy Cowan from Schmaltz Brewing, and I asked him a question at the end of the interview, and I think it's a cool question to ask because I know it takes on a little bit a different tone in the interview because it's a topic that I know is being discussed in the industry, at least amongst brewers and also amongst the Brewers Association. And I know that you've spoken about this before, but what's your opinion as it relates to minorities and craft beer? Like the involvement of minorities in craft beer. You
got about 35 minutes.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. So my take on it is that craft beer is a really cool place. Right? Garrett Oliver is one of the most respected brewers in the country, and it's not like, and I can't speak for Garrett. Maybe he feels completely different about this, but it's not Garrett Oliver, the black brewer. as Garrett Oliver, right? Everybody respects Garrett. But at the same time, craft beer is overly white. And there's a couple of reasons for that. It's an affluent game to get into. It's a little bit more expensive than getting a Budweiser or even a Heineken in some cases. And so you got to have money. Another reason is that craft brewers don't really market themselves. You got a Facebook page and Twitter and stuff, but you're not putting ads in the newspaper or doing that kind of stuff for everybody to see. It's been kind of a word of mouth game. And since it's mostly white people in there, it's mostly white people talking to other white people about craft beer. And there's nothing wrong with that. But what I think needs to happen is, for me, I want to see more minorities involved in beer, both running the kettles and buying the product, right? It can only help to get more people in the tent drinking the beer. Now, I remember Phyllis wrote that article last summer, maybe last year, I can't remember when it was now, why is craft beer so white? And then there was a beer advocate thread. And so I always thought craft beer was this kind of liberal, progressive game. And I still think it is. And I think the people that drink, for the most part, are liberal, progressive, not everybody. But the thread just really bothered me because it was a lot of like, why does it matter? Why does it matter? And then it would be like, I know a black brewer. I know Garrett Oliver. I know Kevin Blodger. There was actually one. I know Kevin. He's really he's a nice guy, But that's not what it's about. It's about like, let's bring more people into the tent. And we're not saying anybody's racist. I'm not saying anybody in craft beer is racist. I'm just saying it hasn't been thought about. Right. If you pull up the Brewers Association page and you go to their staff page, it's lily white. And to me, I'm not saying that's a bad thing. Let me make that clear. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. It's in Boulder, Colorado. I don't know how many of us are in Boulder, Colorado, right? But at the same time, they're not thinking about it. They're not thinking. All they see is we got this explosive growth in craft beer. We're hitting. I remember when craft beer was at 8%. It was like, can we get to 9%? Well, shit, craft beer is at 15% now. You know what I'm saying? It's growing and growing and growing. And I don't think that anybody is actively thinking we need to bring more people in because they're seeing all this growth. But you see this year, there's starting to be a little slowdown in beer in general and in craft beer. And I think now is the time to reach out and bring more people into the tent. Now, I don't know how you do that. I don't know what the Brewers Association can directly do to get more minorities involved in beer. I mean, I have some ideas. You could do some minority scholarships, but those are always kind of tricky and sensitive to certain people. But I think that some wholesale ideas to bring more people into the tent. Otherwise, growth is going to continue to slow. Think about, I don't know about you, but I know my relatives, for the most part, don't drink craft beer. If they're going to go get beer, they're going to get some Budweiser, or they're going to get Heineken, but they're not going out. I say for my cousin who loves to get the craft, but for the most part, most of my relatives aren't drinking craft beer. So I think if we can get more people in and more people involved, it's only going to benefit the industry as a whole. Yep. The more diverse and the more well-rounded you get, the more money everybody's making, the more breweries are going to open, the more styles of beer, the more different takes, different how you look at beer is going to be different. There's a brewery in Chicago called Five Rabbit, which is a Hispanic-focused brewery, right? Yeah, so
they had a beer at GABF called Chinga de Tu. How does it? It's like, anyway. It translates to "fuck your hair."
Yeah.
About Donald Trump. Anyway, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, it's all good. So that's what I'm saying. So you get these different views and different flavors. And, my family traditionally does this and my family traditionally does that. Let's think about putting it in a beer. So it's only going to make craft beer better. So, Julia Hertz, who I love, I think she's a great person, wrote an article in the New Brewer recently about diversity. But what rubbed me about that article is it's more about females and more about white females, kind of in a way that, like, diversity is good, but your article kind of focused on female ownership and what females are doing. And I think there's a lot of women that work for the Brewers Association. I get that that's an issue that they want. They want more females. And I think bringing more females to beer is a great idea too. But all in all, let's get more minorities in it. Let's figure out how to do that. And let's focus on it and get some action on it. They got a subcommittee for everything at the BA. Let's get a diversity subcommittee going and kind of talk about this stuff. Because in the end, it's all about dollars, right? And if we can bring more people in, more people are going to buy products and more people are going to be part of this great, great lifestyle of craft beer.
I'll say this, man. And I think you brought up a good point in that there's been a slowdown in beer consumption. And so now I think it's going to kind of sort of a little bit force the industry to have to start looking at different market segments that they may not have looked at before. And, I mean, I know a lot of, even though like my pops isn't gonna, my pops is drinking Old Milwaukee, right?
Mm-hmm.
That said, I still know a lot of other cats who are drinking craft. Like I can easily point to at least 500 plus people right now that are drinking craft, and that's not everybody.
Yeah, for sure.
So there's a viable market there. There's a reason why a bull is selling. There's a reason why what I'm saying, Steel Reserve is selling. The market is there. It's got to tap into it.
I agree.
And we asked like I said, we asked Jeremy this question last week, and he said a good starting point, and which I agree. Now that I think about it more and more, I agree with it more and more. He was like, think about like HBCUs or just colleges and universities, period. Right? They have, almost all of them have a Black Alumni Association. If you were to go to like their homecoming events and say, yo, let us, even if it's the Brews Association, let us sponsor an event during your homecoming weekend. Or this past I think it was like in October, I went down to Atlanta for the Spelman Morehouse homecoming, which was an amazing experience. That would have been a prime opportunity, because you got people who went to those schools and people who didn't go to those schools, because I didn't go to either one of them. Clearly, I didn't go to either one of those schools, but I was there for their homecoming. This is an amazing amount of people, and that would have been a prime opportunity for like Brews Association, or maybe Creature Comforts, or somebody to just say, yo, let us have a tent out there serving our beer. You might have to donate some beer for the purposes of, getting the recognition out there, but it's a perfect marketing opportunity, I think.
And you see that like the big brewers, Budweiser, they got Budweiser Black. You can go to that website and they talk about all that kind of stuff. We tried to get our beer at the African American Festival that happens in Baltimore every year. But we just couldn't come up with the funds that these big breweries are giving these events, So no, but I do agree with you. I think about it all the time. My wife went to Morgan State, which is right here in Baltimore. How do we get some exposure there? How do we let people know that we're here, And it's something, I don't have the answers to it. I talk about this all the time because it's a big deal to me. I want more Black, brown people drinking beer, That being said, I don't have the perfect solution for it. Yeah. But I think it's something that needs to be thought of. It can only help to bring more people into craft beer.
I think the gaps are closing, I think, slowly, right?
Yeah.
Like for me, like all my family's from Puerto Rico, and I see it all the time, right? Because I'll have like whatever I have my son's birthday party here, and they know by now, Freddie's house, there's craft beer all over the place, right? Some of my uncles, however, they'll bring their 12 packs of Coors Lights, all this other stuff, and they'll have some drinks of craft beer, and it's like the difference is like I think is like a lot of my cousins, for instance, in that same sentence, where I brought them in and I've kind of got their palate accustomed to a little bit more. Now they're drinking, they're buying, they're going out exploring craft beer, a little by little. But I think that gap is kind of closing, where my uncle, for instance, like you said, that wasn't around back then.
Yep.
And then like his kids, they saw him drinking Coors or, whatever, Paps or whatever. And you know what I mean? So it's changing little by little by little. It's really hard though, to change that kind of old mind frame and get over the dollar amount for quality product. Because I think that's what happens a lot of in communities. It's like, well, I'd rather go buy, you have to be frank too. Like I'd rather go buy an eighth of Hennessy and pay whatever it costs than buy a $7.50 of a stout.
Well, and the other thing too is it's the flavors. It's like if you give somebody a bitter double IPA and that's the first craft beer they taste, they're probably not going to like it.
Yeah.
Think about what the beers that got you into craft beer, and I think stouts are kind of a gateway for a lot of people because there's a lot of familiar flavors. You get the chocolate, the dark fruit, all that kind of stuff. And so I think as time goes on, as more craft breweries start to make kind of more approachable beers, pilsners, that kind of stuff, it's going to bring more people to the fold. And I also think as affluence grows in neighborhoods of color, and they have more kind of recreational dollars, craft beer will grow kind of there too. And so I can only say from my experience, kind of being out there and letting people see me and people seeing me on TV or and stuff talking about beer, we have a very diverse crowd that comes to the tap room. And it always makes me happy to look out and say, oh yeah, look at this, pretty cool. So
yeah,
for sure.
I want to end with 3 points, and it's a summation of all this, right? There's no silver bullet.
Nope.
There's no one answer that's going to fix this problem. I think it has to be an amalgamation of solutions that kind of come together at the same time and attack the problem from different angles. Number two, Kevin, you spoke about flavor. When people think, like you said, if people have a bitter IPA for the first time, if they're not genetically predisposed to liking bitterness, then they're going to be turned off from craft beer, period. But the unfortunate thing about it is, Kevin, right now you're drinking a black IPA. You're drinking an IPA that's hoppy and roasty. Freddie's drinking a hazy New England IPA, Northeast IPA, which I think is actually a pretty good gateway beer for new people in the craft beer. I'm drinking a Goza with raspberry and key limes. The three beers that we are drinking could not be further away from each other on the flavor spectrum.
No, definitely.
And that goes to speak to how diverse craft beer can be, not only from a who's participating perspective, but what you're actually drinking perspective. You know, there's a vast array of flavors that we can drink. And the third point I wanted to make is, Kevin, you brought up a good point. You said that you guys just couldn't kick out the bread that these macro breweries are putting out when you're trying to actually get involved in these events. And I think that highlights the issue of why big beer is dangerous for craft beer. Why what they're doing, how they're trying to muscle out competition via just having a deeper pocket as opposed to making a better product. That's not good for beer. We should care about that.
Well, yeah, that's the thing. It's like they go and they scoop up these breweries, and like, you know, part of me says, hey, Budweiser calls me, they want to give me some millions. Hey. But like at the same time, it's like, you know, like I talk about my buddy Jason Oliver. I love the guy. It's a great guy. Devil's Backbone was recently bought by ABI, and now on Facebook, Jason is always kind of posting this pro Bud stuff and calling out beer snobs. And like, while I kind of get it, at the same time, it's like, look at all the dirty tricks they've done to try and keep craft brewers down. You know, it's such a hard thing for me because I'm happy for Jason. I'm happy for his success and for his brewery's success.
Absolutely.
But at the same time, it's like, I don't know. It's a tough call because I always think about it like, I wear Nikes. There's a lot of upstart shoe manufacturers that want to get in the game that probably can't compete with Nike, but I don't care about that. Why do I care about it in craft beer? You know, so it makes it tough.
It's important to note, especially in the case of Jason, that you know, you can look down on the snobs or whatever. You can be pro AB right now because you know they're the ones that gave you that fat check, but you got to remember that craft is what got you to where AB wanted you.
No,
right?
Exactly. You got to notice. Yeah, of course.
So let's not forget that. So nonetheless, Kevin, man, thank you so much, man. I ever since when we met each other at GABF, I was like, I gotta get this guy on. I gotta get him on the show. And if you recall, I shot you an email like 2 days after GABF.
Wow, that was awesome, man.
I was like, yo, we got to get you on the show. So thank you so much for you know, taking some time to spend with us tonight. You know, I definitely you guys just got into Northern Virginia, right?
We've been there for about a year now. About a year now.
Okay. Go ahead.
Oh no.
I'm definitely gonna, you know, be on the lookout for. I get a lot of my beer from from Wegmans because they have a ridiculous. I get my beer from a grocery store, but this ain't. You gotta understand, this ain't just a regular grocery store. Their craft beer selection is bananas, but they don't have. I don't think they're carrying you guys yet.
We're starting to get some inroads into Wegmans now.
Okay.
So I know we're at a couple of them out in Ashburn, and so they should be coming down your way sooner than later.
Okay. So yeah, I'm definitely going to be on the lookout for you guys. I'll shoot some stuff up to Freddie so he can get his B more fix.
Nice.
Nonetheless, but we appreciate you, man. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for giving me a platform to kind of ramble on. I really appreciate it. You know?
Hey, we love it. We love it. So folks, actually this is our last show for this season. We're gonna take a break for the holidays. We'll be back right after the new year. Correct. So be sure to join us. Have a safe and happy holiday. Be on the lookout for us on our different social media platforms. Like I said, we're on Facebook at Craft Beer Nation, Twitter Craft B Nation, and we're on Instagram at The Craft Beer Nation. Be sure to follow us on those different platforms so that you can find out when we're going to start the season 4 actually, and who's going to be our first guest of the season. So until then, ladies,
we're going to bring it.
We're going to bring it. We're going to try our best. We're going to dig deep. We're going to dig deep. So Remember, ladies and gentlemen, until next time, find some great friends, find some great beer, and mind those P's and Q's.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Cheers, y'all.